This edition of Mac Voices is supported by the MacVoices Dispatch, our weekly newsletter to keep you up on all the latest from Mac Voices. Watch or listen to Mac Voices straight from your email client. Sign up at macvoices.com/newsletter and stay up to date. Welcome to Mac Voices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this one is one that I wanted to make sure we got in, and we got in as quick as we could. It was a little tough to make the schedules work, but I have Yev Pusin back from Backblaze, hiding out somewhere in Minneapolis at the JAMF conference. Yev, first of all, thanks so much for taking the time. I know you're busy setting up the booth there.
Yeah, absolutely. It's the day before the show, so I wanted to scrape out some time for you, though.
Well, I really appreciate it. The reason I wanted to get you on is that there have been a number of articles about Backblaze and Mojave and what works and what doesn't, and the usual fear, uncertainty, and doubt kind of things about what's going on and are your backups okay. I'm more interested in making sure that people's backups are okay.
Me too.
And so I wanted to ask you just to walk us through the interaction between Backblaze and Mojave and what you need to do or don't need to do to make sure everything works.
Yeah, no, that's great. So you are correct. There was a lot of motion around the Mojave release. So to give a little bit of background, basically what we found when it launched live for users was that it was just not behaving in a way that we had seen. And so we had to spin up a build that essentially protected users by putting in a pop-up dialog if we all of a sudden lost permissions. So just to give a little bit of more background, in Mojave, it turns out that root is no longer root, so to speak. So if you had, and Backblaze runs as root because we need to have read-write permissions in order to copy the files, encrypt them, and then send the copies up to us. So we need full disk access, essentially, which is what Mojave asks you to do, is to give Backblaze full disk access. Well, what happened was apps that had that access weren't grandfathered in. Users had to go in and basically explicitly give access to Backblaze so that we could then read the full disk. What we did was we spun up a build that said, hey, if all of a sudden we notice that we all of a sudden lose access to all the Apple directories, that's an indication for us that we don't have the right permissions. And so we have a little pop-up that fires that says, hey, Backblaze needs you need to update your permissions in Mojave so that Backblaze can function properly. As soon as we figured this out, we wrote a blog post, tried to get it into as many eyeballs as possible. I think that got picked up actually by a lot of the media, and my initial reaction was actually like, thank you, because we were trying to get it out to as many folks as possible. So when people picked it up, even though in a lot of cases it was like, Backblaze is weird with Mojave, like wait before you update or something, I was like, hey, at least like the information's getting out there. That's everything. That's all I wanted. We also sent emails out to all the customer base, anyone running Mojave, anyone even running older macOS systems. Wanted to get that out the door for them as well, letting them know that, hey, if you update to Mojave, make sure you're running the latest Backblaze version, because at least that has the safety check in there. Right? Like you would still need to do the explicit action, but at least we would do a warning pop-up that says like, hey, something changed, like you should take a look at this. But anyway, it's been a long couple of weeks. We've been doing a steady rat-tat-tat of emails for anyone that we find is effective. So we're trying to move everybody up to our latest clients. We've rolled out auto update, which means that we are actively updating all of the clients as well, in addition to sending out the emails. That way, if folks don't see the emails or if they ignore them, at least the system will get the new update, and then they'll get the pop-up as well. And all the users really have to do is move the Backblaze app from applications into full disk access in their privacy and security settings. The fix is really easy, but the fact that it affected kind of everybody that was running to or updating to Mojave was definitely unfortunate. So it's been a long couple nights and weeks for me. the first email, or one of the first emails that we sent out. No, actually, in a second or third batch of emails went out the day that Spice World started, and I was at that conference, and so it was just like a slew of activity, just trying to get people to update to the latest Backblaze client. So if your listeners take anything away from this, if you're using Backblaze 5.4 and you're on Mojave, you're good to go. You'll see a pop-up telling you what to do, and then you'll be sorted.
You've said exactly what I wanted you to say. Because Charlie McFarland was on, who wrote Take Control of Mojave, and she talked about how this is a security release. And there are a lot of little security gotchas. If you look at them as gotchas, if you look at them as this is Apple trying to protect you more, that's fine. But it also means that you've got to take a little more active role in it.
Definitely. And frankly, we don't think this is a bad idea. Like, you do this all the time on your phone anyway. When you install a new application, it asks for explicit action or explicit permissions for different parts of your phone. So this is, Apple just kind of extending that into the desktop. It's just that the way that it happened was unfortunate. And we've seen reports of a lot of other companies that have hit this exact thing. I won't name like competitors or anything, but I know that we're not the only ones out there. Some of them are just getting that information out to their customers. So we were trying to be pretty proactive and kind of jumping on it as soon as we saw a change in the field. But overall, it's a perfectly good security mechanism. We would have preferred to have been grandfathered in, but I'm sure everyone else is in the same boat, which would, by the way, also make it less secure.
And it wasn't just online backup services that had this issue. There were all kind of services. And if you did the upgrades to Mojave, if you did the upgrades to the software after upgrading to Mojave, you were seeing a lot of this. So this was not something new. Backblaze was not broken. Your cloud backups were not in danger. But it's almost been a study in journalism. The way that some of the headlines were clearly clickbait, others were a little more down the middle of the road, and others were much more positive and proactive. So it sort of depended on what news site or sites that you viewed as to whether you viewed this as just a little bump or a major rut or nothing at all.
Well, and to give you kind of a peek behind the the Backblaze curtain. In a moment where we needed to get information out as quickly as possible, it was kind of one of those things where no press was bad press. So even if the articles were a little doom and gloomy, the more eyeballs that we were getting on the fact that people needed to update their Backblaze client, or the Backblaze application, like, the better. So it was definitely an interesting couple days there. But we're still actively trying to update the app, and we will be sending out more emails throughout the coming weeks just to make sure that everyone's sorted. Right now, I think we have 80% of the people already updated, so the vast majority of folks are perfectly fine. And it is an extra step. The one other thing that we did, actually, I didn't mention, was we changed as part of the new application release. We changed the way we installed. So for existing users, this doesn't really help them because they have to open up all these settings and drag Backblaze over. We made it a very simple process where you just drag the app over. People do this all the time. But for new people installing the application for the first time, we actually pop up both the applications folder and the privacy and security folder and do a little GIF animation of like, just put this over here and everything will be fine. It's pretty slick, actually, but it did take us a day or two into the newest updates. But once you're on version 5.4, you're good to go.
Yeah. So that's the bottom line is, I guess, make sure your software is updated. This is not anything that's broken. It's just something that, because of Apple security and something we all very much need, you're going to have to jump through one or two small little hoops to make sure that everything continues to work properly. That's it.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So before I let you go, I have to ask, tell us about your presence at the JAMF Nation Conference and what you're doing and who you're talking to.
Yeah, so who we're talking to is tough. I haven't talked to anybody yet except the other vendors. It's still early, but we're here talking about our Backblaze for Business service. We have a lot of new functionality that's coming out that we think people will find more interesting. We have SSO that's coming online very shortly, which will enable a lot of kind of larger organizations to utilize us. And we're leveraging B2 Cloud Storage. I'm wearing that shirt right now. It might be backwards, but anyway, in order to back up servers and NAS devices, and you can pay for all that from one Backblaze for Business console. So we're just talking about that, getting out into the field. We were at Spice World a couple weeks ago, doing the same thing, talking to people, seeing how they're using and deploying products. And JAMF is a great deployment tool. In fact, when we were going through this Mojave stuff, one of the people I reached out to was my contact at JAMF, and I was like, "Hey, clearly you guys are deploying things, so you know the ins and outs of what's going on with this better than anyone else. Do you have any tips?" And they're like, "Well, no, actually, the user has to take explicit action, but with JAMF they have packages." Where if you're installing through JAMF or other services like it, you can kind of bypass some of those security settings. So, it's all just one big community of Apple developers trying to make it in this crazy world.
Yeah. Well, I know a lot of my friends are going to be there. I wanted to be there this year, but I couldn't be. So tell everyone I said hello. Have a great conference, and thanks for the time. And we'll see you again, probably Vegas, probably CES.
Yeah, well, CES or NAB, depending on where you're going to go.
Okay, or both.
Yeah. See you, Chuck.
All right, great. Thanks, Yev. Folks, I'm Chuck Joyner. This is MacVoices. Go check your Backblaze right now to be sure that you have the latest software, that everything's running. But rest assured, nothing is broken. It is working exactly as intended. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our MacVoices Facebook group, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us at patreon.com/MacVoices and join these folks who help keep MacVoices coming to you. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CacheFly at cachefly.com.